What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ, soon to be Bucky, who'll be joining us in a minute, and our smiling friend, who life has never been better than Rhett Lewis.
Just Rhett, how roses here, buddy.
When are we going to Vegas? I got to take you with me. This has been your year, man. Unbelievable.
It's pretty good, and it's extended into the next calendar year, which is even better. So we had a great 2025, and a great finish to 2025. Yeah. And then, I mean, like, you start out 2026 with the first Rose Bowl win in program history. I mean, like, you're at the top from the beginning.
Yeah, that's insane. It's absolutely insane. And we are going to preview these two semifinal games here in just a little bit. Bucky will be joining us. He's hopping on in just a minute. We've got some NFL stuff we're going to handle at the top in terms of some big coaching news with John Harbaugh. And then as of this morning, Mike McDaniel's gone as well. So the Dolphins are now in both the head coach world and the GM world. We'll look at some of these other coaching vacancies. Again, the world all revolves around Rhett. We'll get to the results of the season-ending rookie draft. What? I mean, Jiminy Christmas. By the way, I have a beautiful baby blanket for you.
Great!
It's coming your way.
Thank you.
So, yeah,
that's very kind.
Have you been able to duck this stuff that's going around sickness-wise? By the way,
our whole house has been sick one at a time for like the last month. Like somebody gets it, and then just as soon as they're over it, the next person gets it. It happens without fail.
Yeah, I remember those days. This is just in time for me to go to New England as a San Diego kid who's going to freeze his tail off this weekend. I'm sure that'll just
you're going to be in great shape. Yeah.
Should be fine. We're gonna have time to preview all these college games in a minute, but I do want to get to one thing with you. Two things, because we can talk more prospects and then we'll talk about the game in a little bit. But two takeaways. One is I've had a chance then, as I'm working through all these guys, went back and watched some more, the bigger games, these last couple games with Fernando. And I mean, I was in on him as the top guy, and I've never been more convinced than I am now that he's clearly the top guy. That was the first point. The second point is I've been going through doing all these defensive linemen and going across the board, and I'm telling you, Rhett, I know Indiana is playing great, and I know they're extremely well coached, and everybody's just kind of penciling them in, getting through this next round because they already beat Oregon. Yeah. That defensive line is so really, really good. Really good. Amari Washington and Bear Alexander inside is a problem.
Amari's a first-round pick, right?
He's the best D tackle I've seen so far.
No question. Probably not quite there on Bear Alexander, but I mean,
watch the tape. I know. I guess he's coming back to school.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, coming back.
But there's some freaky stuff on tape with that kid.
He's been playing better since the Indiana loss. I mean, that's kind of been the last half of the season
stretch, and I was like,
really good.
There's some, and I'm telling you, they've got guys at all levels. Both of their safeties are really good. The corner, obviously coming off of the huge game, is a great player.
Yeah, we'll talk about him in 2 years.
The linebackers run all over the place. It is a very good defense, and they're playing at a very high level. It's going to be. I just think, look, Indiana, they've been awesome and they've looked indestructible. I think that this version of Oregon is going to be the best team that they've played, and that includes Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game.
I think I would agree with you on that. To be perfectly honest, I do feel like Oregon has played better as a team since the Indiana loss. Now, the interesting thing is they've really been going to the two tight end looks. Right. They got a first round pick in Kenyon Sadiq. You want to have him on the field at all times. You probably got a first round pick in the other tight end, Jamari Johnson, the next year, whenever he decides to come out. Mm-hmm. Now, he's not as much of a blocker as Sadiq will, but they are in 12 personnel. They were 70% of the time against Texas Tech. Like, it doesn't sound like Oregon to me, but the way that they've been running the football.
They also couldn't block Texas Tech, so there's another reason to put some extra guys on the field.
There's that. But it does create some real matchup problems with both of those tight ends, right? Like, just how are you going to deal with that? You're probably not going to be in a lot of man coverage in those looks, just because there's not a great matchup with Sadiq and even with Jamar Johnson. So
we got Buck on here. Buck, we audibled. We moved some things around because I wanted to get you in here for sure when we get to the NFL stuff on some goings on there. But I figured we're in this college space. We might as well just live here for a minute. Looking at these matchups and these games, I was just making the case to Rhett right before you popped on that going through and watching Oregon's D-line play the last half of the year, it's impressive, man. I just said like this is not just pencil in the W because you beat a team and move on. Like I have a feeling this is going to be an absolute war.
Hey, man, look, it's funny that you brought it up because last night I was studying in Washington, and he is absolutely dominant.
I was watching the same tape.
I mean, his hand movement, his ability to get up and out. And I'm just like, man, this dude might be the best one of the bunch. Like, he is terrific up front. And you're right, because I'm fully immersed in college football. I've gone to every website. I've looked at all the videos from the social team of Indiana, the behind-the-scenes clip. I've looked at all the stuff. Dan Lanning is a maniac watching Ducks versus them, just how they're getting ready. To me, this is fascinating because in my mind, I'm trying to figure out what adjustments are Oregon going to make compared to the first one? Because Dan Lanning, after that game, talked about how Indiana not only outcoached them, but outplayed them. And you can tweak and adjust and do some things, but the guy on the other sideline is a maniac too. And Kirk Cignetti is going to have something in his bag with that coaching staff that is really good, well-connected, with a really good team. This is a fascinating game to watch because as much as I want to say, oh, in a rematch, look, Oregon to do it, I'm looking at how Indiana systematically tore apart Alabama, and I can envision them doing similar things to Oregon as they are dialed in.
So DJ's point earlier was the defensive line for Oregon has really ascended, right? And they've really come together, even more so since the first time Indiana and Oregon played. And I would 100% agree with that. I'd also tell you, though, Indiana's offensive line has shuffled through a fair amount of combinations over the course of the last 7 weeks, and I think settled in against Alabama on their best group. And they trot out 6 offensive linemen now 15 times against Alabama and scored touchdowns. 2 of their touchdowns were in those 15 plays. Actually, 3 of them. So it's I do agree with you on that front, but I think Indiana's offensive line is playing better than they were in that first matchup. So I'm 100% like this to me is as weird as it sounds, with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and all of Oregon's weapons that we talk about all the time. This is a line of scrimmage game on both sides.
Oh, 100%. I don't think there's any question about it whatsoever, that it will be decided there. And that's why, to me, it was just looking at it going, man, I knew, TV scouting, you kind of see some things and you see flashes here or there. But then when you watch it, I was like, man, Oregon, all 3 levels, they are fast. They run to the ball. And I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I cannot wait to watch that one. We flip it over to the other matchup. What are you looking forward to in that one, Buck? I think the obvious point is just that defensive line for Miami is probably the best unit in that game. And how does Ole Miss stack up?
Yeah, man, that defensive line, you talk about 3 and 4, Candy Messador just being able to get after the pass. And when you watch them, the way they play, man, they play so hard, so much effort and energy they expend in terms of getting after it. They're relentless in their approach. And I'll say they dominated the first 2 games of the playoff. The way they went through Texas A&M, it was all up front. And then the second game that they won, it was the same. But Trinidad Chambers, his ability to get out the pocket, his ability to play out of structure, to me is fantastic. And we all have a tremendous amount of respect for Georgia. But the way that he took over that game, look, man, it leaves a lasting impression. I just have this sense in listening to Pete Golding and listening to the Ole Miss players, man, they're just locked in and focused. And I think this is going to be a very difficult game for Miami because ultimately it's going to come down to quarterback play, and it's Trinidad Chambers versus Carson Beck. Can Carson Beck take his game up a notch to match where Trinidad Chambers is going to play?
My thought is no at this point, because I feel like Chambliss is on an absolute heater right now. And a quarterback on a heater in the tournament is a powerful thing. And I trust what I've seen from him. Now, I think you could say that Beck has held up pretty well over these 2 wins that they've had. He
looks comfortable.
He does look way more comfortable than I feel like we saw him, maybe down the second half of the season again for Miami in the regular season. So, but I trust Chambliss more to find ways to make plays at this point than I do with Beck. Not to say that he can't, but just at a higher level. I think he's playing better right now. That offense puts him in great spots to push the ball down the field, to get out of the pocket and make some of those plays that might help neutralize what Miami can do up front, which is so dang impressive. So if they contain him and they're bottling him up and he's not running all over the field making plays, I think it tilts into Miami's favor. But otherwise, I got Ole Miss in this one.
So, guys, when I was in high school, high school basketball coach was a great coach, and he used to always before the game, you bring the team in there in a little tiny team room you have in high school. Remember, Buck, the whiteboards? He had the whiteboard, and he would write up the keys to the game. He would hey, we got defensive rebounding. We got to take care of the ball against the press and whatever. It was always 3 things every game, and it was different. The keys to the game. So, like for Trinidad Chambliss, if I'm the quarterback coach, when he walks in to the meeting room, this is what I'm just putting up on the board here. You can see that. That's
pace, space, chase.
Space, and chase.
That's it. We're going to play fast. This defensive line, this is how we're handling this. We're going to play fast. We're going to be out in space and make those dudes chase you around. And we get to the second half, these guys' their tongue is going to be on the ground because we're going to try and drag them that way because we're not going to out physically, handle those guys up front. They're not equipped to do so.
No, I mean, I think that's the best way. When you look at Miami, because they do play so much zone, like they're going to be some windows and some availability. They're going to have to work the perimeter. And then it's going to come down to, can you tackle in space? Which team can tackle in space? Because if you want to operate like that, now it's about my playmakers, my ball carriers on your defensive backs. And Miami has tackled really well throughout the tournament. Like they're not missing many tackles in space. There's not a lot of yak yards that they're giving up. So this is on those guys from Ole Miss to be able to scoot and wiggle and make things happen. Because if you're going to play that perimeter game, you have to be able to make the first defender miss. If not, we're just wasting time throwing a bunch of bubble screens and such.
Yeah, and Miami saw Jeremiah Love earlier this year and held up well. This back from Ole Miss. I know he's not draft eligible. He is good.
He's good.
He is fun.
Where are we at on Chambliss if he doesn't get the I think they were looking into another year of eligibility, right?
Yeah, I have not done a full workup there because I'm jamming through guys I know are in this thing. Yeah. But he is fun to watch, no question.
That's for sure.
I mean, I'll say this: I haven't done my full deal yet on Beck, but it feels like just from Ty Simpson just declared, and I did some homework on him in terms of his health late in the year because when I watched him, I wasn't super jazzed. But I did. I know. I guess I'm learning he had a back, he had a bursa sack, like he had a lot of stuff, injuries going on late in the year. So I'm gonna try and be fair and go back and watch.
But some of that is his size too, though. Like he's not great. Like he's not the biggest thing. Like so
which led me to I think this is an important game between these two quarterbacks. If Chambliss doesn't get an extra year, and with Beck having a ton of experience, which we like to see, he's got size, he's got arm strength, and all of a sudden now he potentially is in a national championship game with a chance to win a national championship. That's a heck of a closing argument for who the heck's going to be the third quarterback.
We had talked about him, coming in, maybe even going into his last season at Georgia as like one of the guys in the very top.
I did him over the summer because we assumed he was going to be a first round pick. Yeah. And then it just kind of it didn't go that way. But adversity, we always say you want guys who got some scars on him. He's got some scars on him, Buck.
Sure.
Yeah, he does have some things. Now he's a Jacksonville kid. So you hear a lot about like his dynamic situation and those things. And look, we talk about the adversity that he's overcome, not only on the field, but off the field and those things. He is someone that is interesting. And you talk about being able to play yourself up by the way that you perform in the tournament. He has that chance. Now, he hasn't had to do much the first couple games, but in this game, he is going to have to play at a high level. What I will remember in Georgia, the toughness that he displayed when his elbow or whatever, and he goes back in and he wills him to victory. That sticks out in my mind because the one thing that we know, this position is about toughness, particularly at the next level. So now if he can do that with the experience and a better performance, now we begin to talk about him a little differently than maybe we would if he didn't have these experiences in the tournament.
Yeah, well, I'm pumped for these games, man. I cannot wait. They're going to be awesome. I know, Rhett, you're personally invested, and I'm excited for you, man. App State didn't make it this year, but I'm hoping next year is our year. Next year, we're in the Final Four next year. A lot of furniture money. We got to dole out a lot of that furniture money, trying to get the roster in a little bit better shape. All right, let's get this over with before we get to the stuff we want to talk about on the NFL front here. The rookie draft. If you're new to the show, we do each and every week. The three of us, we have a draft. You can only draft rookies. They have to be quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, receivers. So but you get three of those players. No quarterbacks this year because we
not this year, but
just receivers, running backs, tight ends. So we did this throughout the whole year. We tallied the points basically off of a fantasy scoring system. There were times where I felt like Bucky and I were going to assert our dominance, and those times were maybe in the preseason. Once we actually started tabulating this thing, I think Rhett might have taken it wire to wire. He might have actually gone wire to wire. Bucky closed strong late to make it close. Rhett ended up with 79 points. Bucky got in the 70s. He's at 73, just 6 behind. And then I embarrassed myself. 64 points, just a distant third.
Yeah, you went kind of Cade Klubnik down the stretch.
Yeah, you try. They say trying to defend a title is the hardest thing to do. And I don't know if we were overconfident. What it was. But
it might have been.
I think it was also Rhett's year. Buck, when he has a kid, wins the Rose Bowl, wins the rookie draft.
It doesn't get any better.
It's his year. You can't fight that.
The only thing that'll make it better is if Indiana basketball reemerges as a powerhouse, and that would make me absolutely throw up.
We'll talk about that in March.
Yeah, we got time on that front.
We got time on that.
All right. Well, anyways, congratulations, Rhett. Well done.
Thanks, guys. This was fun, though. What's great about it is, it really keeps you locked in on, some guys in some ways, and like how they're used, how their usage changes during the year. Remember, Travion Henderson was a 0 for the first month of the season. We were all thinking that would be, much different. Then he comes on strong, helps me get this win in the last week of the season. Emeka Buka started strong and then fizzled.
All right,
late.
so let's get to these NFL games here. Sorry.
All right. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
No, we're done. That's it. You got your one victory left. Okay. I'm not giving you 2. That's it. Let's get to the news because I want to get some of this news here. I couldn't do it anymore, Buck. It's just embarrassing for us, man. We got to be better next year. How about I want to get Buck immediate thoughts. We know since we've last been together, John Harbaugh let go in Baltimore after 18 years. And then, maybe these are connected, but Mike McDaniel's let go this morning with Miami Dolphins. So I'd love to get your first blush thoughts on those 2 decisions and what that looks like going forward.
Well, it looks like Baltimore to Baltimore West to now Baltimore, South Florida, maybe in terms of the connections. You think about Ross being a Michigan guy, being well connected to Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh's brother, kind of wanting that thing all over again. They talk about maybe they're talking to Chad Alexander potentially as the general manager. And so if we're gonna get the band together, get the band all the way together when it comes to it. So I could see it.
Well, Chad's a buddy of ours, and I work with Chad forever, and Buck's been friends with him forever. But I know it's funny because people are saying, well, you've got the, Stephen Ross connection with Michigan and with the Harbaughs, so that connects him to the Harbaughs. And then you've got Chad, who works for Jim now, but had worked for John for over a decade in Baltimore. So, there's a relationship there. So that's how it ties together. And then I'm sitting there thinking, what, they're not, but that's the baseline ball knowledge, Buck. Right. What the other ball knowledge is, who have they gone to for opinions on this thing? Well, they tried to reach out to Jimmy Johnson, first of all. And Jimmy said, well, I don't really want to be involved with that, but why don't you use Troy Aikman? Okay, so we use Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman and Jimmy Johnson, together with the Dallas Cowboys, the wide receivers coach on those Dallas Cowboys teams, Hubbard Alexander, son, Chad Alexander. Yep. Chad's known Troy since he was a little kid. He's been around the practice fields there, way back.
Look at you.
So there's a lot of connective tissue here that thing, it does make a lot of sense. We'll see. I know John Harbaugh is going to have his choice. Maybe he wants to go somewhere where there's a more established quarterback situation, wherever that might be. There's lots of different opinions on that, but you could make a pretty strong case that makes a lot of sense for those to be paired together.
Even outside of the obvious connections there with Chad and with John Harbaugh, the Dolphins conducted the initial phase of the GM interviews, moved into the second phase, identified 4 guys that they're going to bring in addition to Chad. It's Champ Kelly, who's been the interim now 2 times over at 2 different franchises, John Eric Sullivan, and then Josh Williams. You could also kind of point a picture there and you're thinning the herd, but also you're getting feedback on Mike McDaniels from a lot of these GMs. And maybe that theme was, hey, if this happens for us, we've got to look to a different direction there at the head coaching spot now that they've kind of been through some of those interviews.
Well, Bucky, you saw that in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So a few different things. One, I'll say this about Miami. When you talk to the people around there, they talked about the culture probably needing to be a little harder edge, right? So DJ and I talked, DJ's gone to Miami Heat games. That city requires a different level of discipline and detail within your organization to avoid the distractions that can lure you in. So the happy, go along, get along environment that might have existed under Mike McDaniel is never going to work in Miami because you can't get your players to operate and live in the right space when it comes to that. When it comes to like moving on and trying to get like whatever those other candidates that you talked about, I am sure they looked at the situation. I'm sure they've also heard the stories and they felt like, hey, man, we got to have a different approach to be able to be successful in this environment. I think there are a lot of things in play outside of the connections with Axe and Troy and Jimmy Johnson and those things. But I think a lot of people can look at the locker room and the issues that they've had the last couple of years and say that, yeah, we have to operate differently in this space if we're going to be a consistent winner in South Florida.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Again, the quarterback thing is murky there, unless they feel Quinn Ewers is that dude, going forward, which
played pretty well.
When you stack up Quinn Ewers, who, a lot of people thought, man, he should have gone in the portal, could have made over $5 million last year, come out this year. Now, he didn't get the money initially up front, but he's going to get to free agency a year earlier now with where he was selected, and he's been given the opportunity to be a starting quarterback. So maybe that's their guy.
But now let's look at it this way. Where would Quinn Ewers go in this year's draft?
That was my point. I mean, because you could look at it and say he would have been stacked up favorably
up at the top.
Yeah.
So now is Quinn Ewers versus the 2026 class, but Quinn Ewers has the benefit of playing NFL in the league for 1 year. So we get a chance to see him play good on good. And maybe that's the conversation that you begin to have with the guys who are eventually going to be the decision makers.
Well, and the Dolphins probably won too many games down the stretch to really.
They're not in the market for the top two guys, and it drops off a cliff.
Exactly.
So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. Quickly on Baltimore side of things, Buck, I've drawn the very easy line from my vantage point of Jesse Minter. You look at Jesse Minter, having spent time there in Baltimore, it's an easy move. Their defense needs massive improvement. Mm-hmm. Well, he was there once upon a time when they were a good defense with him and Mike McDonald. Oh, by the way, Mike McDonald, very similar guy. Look at the success he's had with Seattle. Yeah. You could make that case. And then I would also point to Anthony Weaver, who was very popular in that building as a player and as a coach.
He's on everybody's list right now.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then has been in Miami as the DC there. I think he's a legitimate candidate. And the one name that I think might surprise people, but I've seen him on darn near every one of these lists, and I've heard a lot of good things about him, is Davis Webb. I don't know if either of you guys have any connection to him or know him well. Yeah, Buck, did you do Elite 11 stuff with him?
Yeah. I remember Davis, like when he was coming through there, like it's funny to watch him go all the way up, and now he's being talked about. It is interesting, having been in the Sean Payton program, what he's been tasked with, watching the development of Bo Nix and those guys. That's a really, really interesting name. And I think it's funny because one other name that I think we're throwing there with Baltimore ties by way of his dad would be Clint Kubiak, given that Gary Kubiak was the offense coordinator when they won the Super Bowl. To me, what Baltimore needs is not a reset. They need a refresh. They need someone that understands the culture. They just need to freshen it up a little bit. Similar to what Mike McDonald did a little bit in Seattle. Jesse Minter would be good for that. Anthony Weaver would be good for that. It'd just be interesting to see how this plays out because, man, when you've had a coach, 18 years, a lot of success in those things, I wonder how it goes. But I will say this. Having read and talked to people in the building about the Lamar Jackson thing, the articles that came out and how that is, man, situation number one is you got to get the culture right in the locker room when it comes to how everyone is treated, how everyone is responding to the demands of the culture.
Yeah, boy, I think about that a lot, and this will be a first, DJ. This is going to be my first baseball analogy on this.
Nice. Baseball guy.
9 players. Remember
Red Lewis, baseball guy. Baseball guy. Okay.
But you remember, before I came to NFL Network, I was in Boston for 5 years and was around the baseball junkies that won a World Series title in 2013. The Johnny Gomeses of the world that came together there. And they did that. They formed that culture there after culture had gone sour in the final years of Terry Francona's run in Boston. And it didn't feel like it was anybody's fault. And I thought, Terry was very kind of honest about it all when it all happened at the end. They had like a press conference afterwards and talked about how, sometimes it's just time for a new voice. And not that John Harbaugh has been there for 18 years, but he's been there with, the core of that team now for Lamar's whole tenure, which is kind of getting up there in years and we don't even really think about it. And, I think sometimes the messaging can go stale. And so whether that was the case or not, it feels like it was just kind of like James Franklin at Penn State. Could they have kept him? Yeah, sure. But like it felt like it was probably that thing had kind of run its course. And I'm wondering now, do they go opposite? Or do they try to bring in something that is similar, to what they've been accustomed to here? Davis Webb would be the opposite to me at this point in terms of certainly experience and been around the league. I will say that I was really impressed with him, Bucky. I don't remember your impressions, but he was the offensive coordinator at the Shrine Bowl. We did production meetings with him. And, he's the QB coach in Denver, but it felt like he was kind of ready for that moment. At that time, I felt like he also had Sean Payton's like shadow over his shoulder, was a little bit careful about what he was trying to say. But it did feel like that was a moment that you were like, okay, I could envision this guy being a part, in leading a franchise because, he's been around some really good ones. Eli speaks highly of him when they were together, in New York with the Giants when he was a backup there. So I think that'd be great. A great piece for your quarterback too.
Yeah, well respected. To go from being a backup to immediately getting a quarterback job to getting going with Sean Payton and doing all those things, it speaks highly of what he brings to the room. And I'm going to say this, the Baltimore Ravens are at a crossroads when it comes to Lamar Jackson. They got to figure out what the contract situation is, but they're doing it with a quarterback that is aging. And for the first time, and maybe it was my eyes, the first time I watched the Pittsburgh game, I saw Lamar Jackson run, and he didn't have the superpowers that I'm used to seeing. The juice is not there. And when you think about athletic quarterbacks and what happens as they get up in age, we saw it happen with Russell Wilson. When you lose that part of it, does he have the foundational skills to transition into being a pocket passer full-time and an occasional runner? Whoever takes over that job has to have a plan to deal with a quarterback who is in transition.
Can I give you if I was Mike McDaniel's agent, my one thought with him going forward, and we'll kind of wrap this thing up. I would say, listen, man, like, you want to be a head coach again. This is the move right now. It sounds like that the Chiefs are going to let Nagy go somewhere where he can call plays. Let's get to a team that needs to be refreshed. Let's go with Andy Reid. Bring all your ideas, bring all your creativity, and see if you can't rekindle this offense that's gone stale in Kansas City. And you've got Patrick Mahomes is a heck of a player to be able to try and implement all of your ideas. To me, that one would be kind of scary a little bit for the league, Buck. When you look at it just feels like that this, again, that word we're using, it's kind of stale. It's just, they need something. They need something new. And I think McDaniel, for whatever anybody thinks of him as a head coach, nobody can doubt how good he is at designing things and being creative. And I think Andy Reid would welcome that.
Yeah, look, I think for Andy Reid, it'd be the first time that he's really gone outside the family to bring in an offensive mind, because that system that Mike McDaniel runs isn't not quite the West Coast thing that Andy Reid is, but
it's derivative of that. It's come from that.
Yeah, but the ideas in terms of the creativity, the different motions that we've seen Mike McDaniel use, the way that they were able to get the run game unlocked in a very creative way. There's a lot of things that Andy Reid could take that could enhance what they're already doing in Kansas City.
Well, I mean, that was what immediately struck me when you mentioned that was, boy, does Kansas City need a refresh in the run game, right? And that would be, I mean, some of the stuff that McDaniel has done with, a bunch of different backs now, but with Achane and Raheem Mostert scoring touchdowns, left and right for that team a couple of years ago as well. I think that would be a welcome sight in Kansas City.
So we'll see. Anyways, this was a fun one. There's a lot of other openings that we'll get to on another episode. I think this thing is, I don't know that this is going to sprint through all these hirings. I think teams have really started to take their time on this. They want to talk to a lot of different candidates. So we'll see how long. It does sound like the Dolphins want to get their GM in place because they need to get their head coaching thing started up. So I'm sure, as you're listening to this, it might already been announced, but who knows? Hey, Rhett, I know you got to get to work, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
We appreciate you. Congrats again on the year of Rhett in 2026. Off to a great start.
I learned from the best, guys. I learned from the best. I learned my scouting from the best. So that's you guys. You guys should
let me know who those guys are. They're clearly not the two schmoes that just lost in this rookie draft. All right, that's going to do it, everybody. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.